So I'm going to start talking about something random and then bring it back. At the end, we're going to be talking about a Sour Grapes addendum story, we'll say. When I was a kid, I know many of you know this because all of you know me personally. I used to play chess. I used to be the captain of my high school chess team, and we were state champs, national champs, top 10 super nationals. We were good. I wasn't good. I was actually quite bad. But short of being like top 100 16-year-olds in the country or something like that. So I wasn't actually like good or even close to being good, because being like in the top 10 was impossible for me, right? But I remember learning the game and playing the game and getting better at the game and realizing that I could, play at a different level and kind of the people who I used to play and I lost to, I ended up being able to beat consistently, and then, the next group and the next group, and that's what happens when you progress in the skill, right? Chess is kind of easy because it's like a two, there's a clear outcome, win, lose, draw, right? And so I got better and better and better, and I remember at some point I was really, really proud because I broke, this barrier and got to a new rating and was playing at a new level, and I was like, wow, this is awesome, I got better. And then I realized how much better I needed to get to be actually good, and how much better I needed to get to be actually great, and then how much better I needed to get after that to be one of the best, and how absolutely impossible it would be to be the best, right? I understood the what's the word, the path ahead of me as someone improving at a skill. That became very clear to me that I would never be the best in the world at chess. And in fact, I thought about it some more. I was like, the best person in the world on the rating list is maybe not the best person in the world, period. Generally, I think people probably agree that the best person in the rating list is actually the best person, because you need to be playing at that level publicly with others to be that good. But there's definitely someone who would have who, if they had picked up the game, would have been better than them, right? In general, I think about the idea of the establishment knows who is great, but for a niche subject, there's many, many people outside of the establishment who are savants. I think of Ramanujan in mathematics, right? He was a Indian mathematician who learned math by reading textbooks and just was so weird and creative and thought about math in this totally different way. And he sent letters to, I believe, Woodrow or Wilson, no, someone in Cambridge. And the person in Cambridge was like, this guy's a genius, let's bring him over. And they brought him over to England. And then he died, because I think part of it was the transition from India to England. But he was kind of this genius who came out of the woodwork. And that sort of always reminded me that there are these geniuses in the woodwork, right? Even the best in the world might not be the best, because there are other people who don't even try, who would be or are that good. I also think of the Tarahumara tribe, the people who they live in the Sierra Mountains. They live in Mexico in the mountains, and running is so much part of their culture that they are actually incredible ultra marathoners. So much so that they the first time that they a group of them went up to the US to run ultra marathons, they just tied rubber tires to their shoes, cut out rubber tires to their shoes and ran and beat everyone else, even though they didn't do any training. They weren't part of the establishment. They literally didn't have the right shoes or anything, but without even trying, they're yeah, I can do this. I can run 50 miles. I don't give a fuck. So they're just naturally talented based on the place that they lived and the genetic makeup that they have there, right? So it was almost just they just happened to be discovered as these incredibly talented ultramarathoners, right? So the world is filled with people who are amazing at things, and I realized I would never be the best. I would never be the best chess player in the world. Easily, I realized that. It was obvious. Of course I would never be the best chess player in the world, The best chess players in the world now were 10 times better than I was as a 16-year-old when they were 16, They were grandmasters when they were 16. I was just a barely average tournament player, And so I realized that. And to me, that was one of the biggest and most important moments in my life, because I realized I probably would never be the best in the world at literally anything ever. There's 7 billion people on the planet. There were 7 billion back then. Now there's 8 billion people on the planet almost. It's actually 6, now it's 7. Okay. But I realized I would never be the best in the world at anything ever I could think of. Never be the best in the world. So what the fuck was the point of competing? It just depends on who was in the room competing with you. If you had someone who's really good in the room competing with you, you might think that you're terrible. If you had someone who's really bad, you might think you're great. But that wouldn't make actually any difference to your actual performance. Your objective performance wouldn't be related to who's in the room. Your perception of your performance would be. And so, when I thought I was getting better, I realized I was just in the room with the wrong people. And if I was in the room with the right people, I would be absolutely crap. And so I kind of went into a place thinking about this. And I was like, but I still like getting better. Even though I know I'm not going to be in this world, I'm still loving this. I'm enjoying getting better because I know I'm better than I was before. And I realized that the only person I'm really competing with is myself, right? It doesn't matter if I win or lose against somebody because they're just someone else. They're just, someone I will play against and then not see again, right? The thing that's important for me is being better than I was before. And that was my breakthrough. I realized that I will never be the best in the world at anything, and competing with other people doesn't make sense because they have a completely different set of conditions. Whether they grew up playing chess or they spend all their time playing this game, or any skill, obviously, whether they're devoted their entire lives to, whether they do it professionally or whether they do it as an amateur, whether they have, natural talent or physiological abilities that improve them, or whether they work super, super hard, or they're just, great at recovery or eating, whatever it is. Those people have their own set of skills, ability. And competing against them doesn't make sense because you could be competing against great people or terrible people, and your sense of self is dependent on somebody else. That doesn't make any sense. So, sorry, that was a little bit of nonsense. But, so I realized I'm never going to invest in the world of anything, and the only person I'm competing against is myself. And still to this day, that is the big driver for me. I want to get better than I was before. I know there are tons of people in the world who are infinitely good or absolutely terrible, right? And I want to be in the 85th percentile of all the things that I try. I don't want to be the best. I don't want to be, I just want to be above average, just decently above average. And that's kind of my goal. And so secondary part of this is that I grew up with two older sisters. One of them was 4 years older and the other was 8. And our parents compared our, let's say, scores to each other. And my oldest sister was not very good in school. My middle sister was very good in school. And so my middle sister was better than my oldest sister. And so when they compared each other, my parents would compare them. My oldest sister felt good. She's like, I'm better. This is great, But I was better at the standardized tests and random stuff than my middle sister. And so when our parents compared us, she would feel bad. She'd be like, oh my God, Russ, Russ, this is better than me. And I would feel so fucking bad. I was like, I don't know. I was just trying to answer the questions right. I didn't mean to do a thing that would make you feel bad. She can't do anything about it now. They're comparing her score on a test 4 years ago to my score on the test today, a standardized test or whatever. I was like, that doesn't make sense. That's not how it should work. And I saw her pain and her competitiveness, and I just felt guilt. I thought that beating someone at something could make them feel really bad. And so that's one of the other things that kind of plugged into this. I only want to compete against myself because, I feel safe about losing or winning to myself. And I also only want to compete against people who are in it for the game, are okay to lose or be better or worse. And I typically only feel really, really comfortable in letting everything out when I'm playing or doing things with people who are better than me. When I'm doing things with people who are worse than me, I always hold back because I feel a little bit of guilt. I don't want to be that much better than they are because I don't want them to feel bad. And even though they might be totally cool and it's not them feeling bad, it's just I remember my sister and her feeling bad, and I just don't want anyone to feel bad, right? So I love and only bring out my A game, I think, my intrinsic, deep, subconscious A game, when I really fucking put everything I have into it, when I'm playing with people who are better than me. And this is anything, playing or working or whatever. This is why I just want to surround myself with people who are better than me. And people who know they're going to win if we compete, right? And so we can compete safely. We can compete in a safe way where they know that they're going to win, but I just want to kind of get a little closer and a little closer and a little closer, so they can be a barometer, a metric for me to chase. And maybe one day I get as good as them and then find the next person who's much, much better than me, right? Or maybe I never get as good as them, but still, the competition makes me better. There's an analogy, allegory, or whatever, when you're running like the 100-meter dash, you will always, whatever, you'll always run a faster 100-meter dash if you're running alongside someone who is like about your skill level. Like, trying to run faster than the person next to you makes you run faster than if they weren't there. And I remember that. I realized that when we were doing 100-meter dash in high school, I would do it alone, and I'd be like, okay, this is fast. But then I remember doing it with someone next to me, and it was just a random person who was a little bit faster than me. And I remember just being slightly behind them, and then I put some out of nowhere came this extra bit of this energy, and I just pushed just a little bit harder and was able to, I was just keeping up or still lost, it doesn't matter. But like, I did a way faster 100-meter dash with someone next to me to compete against than I did without someone next to me to compete against. So I firmly and truly believe that having someone to compete against, a competition, like a peer, helps drive you to be better. But when you compete against someone, it shouldn't be petty, it shouldn't be awful. It should be, you both know and understand that like you're both trying to just be the best, and that this competition can make you both better. It should be just this pleasant, happy competition. And that's the kind of shit that I fucking love with coworkers and friends and whatever. Healthy, pleasant, positive competition. So, zoom back, sour grapes. And so when I realized I wouldn't be the best in the world at anything, it was actually this huge windfall, this thing that sticks with me to this day, that makes me who I am, And so I was at the Marshall Chess Club like a year plus ago. And it was like a blitz tournament. I'd stayed late. We had played Bug House. I met this guy who was, like a 2600, like one of the best players in the country. And he was a smart guy, but he's a total fucking asshole. He had like a super Republican finance vibe and view, and like he was very self-assured about his beliefs, even though I thought his beliefs were dumb. But he was kind of like a little bit of a cold, weird, mean person, but he was incredibly intelligent, you could tell, and I could see the way he was leading the arguments. And I couldn't disagree with the arguments. I thought they were very well like constructed, but I still felt like they were wrong. But I was telling him about this moment about never being the best, and he is one of the best, but not the best. And he was saying like, oh, the ones who are the best are like have high IQs or are super smart or whatever. And I was like, dude, fucking don't bring IQ or any of that nonsense into this. Like, that's not a real thing that has anything to do with fucking chess, right? He's like, no, it's a real, it's important thing about it, blah, blah, blah. And, I told him this thing. I was like, I realized I would never be the best. And he's like, yeah, but maybe you're just saying that because you wanted to make yourself feel better about not being able to be the best. And I was like, okay, you're kind of like, you want to be the best, and so you haven't given up on this idea, so you're still like projecting this. And I was like, no, I'm fine with it. He's like, yeah, but like you're doing sour grapes, right? Or he was explaining. I was like, so you mean sour grapes? And he's like, yeah, that thing. I was just like, no, though, that's not what I genuinely feel. He's like, I don't believe you. I think you're lying to yourself. And I was like, I mean, there's no way for me to convince you or that this is how I feel, but I hope you know me well enough to know that is like the way I'm wired or who I am or whatever. Like, we had been talking for a couple hours at that point, and it was just this really like interesting moment where this person was just throwing all this shade, saying like, you're rationalizing a failure or whatever. But I think like realizing it was such a success. So I think about that moment sometimes when I think about sour grapes, because it is an important cognitive bias, and it is a thing that we all do. And there's no way to really tell if someone is saying that because it's saying they don't want the thing because they changed their mind or because of the outcome. And so I always lean towards saying, I haven't changed my mind, and I have to accept this failure. Even if I do change my mind, I stay that. So anyways, that's my sour grape story, along with some like a little bit of like trauma dump, because that guy at the Marshall Chess Club was a fucking garbage human who makes me like so sad to be another person. Anyways, thank you so much. This has been my weird drunken ramble, and you're all fucking wonderful humans. Thank you so much, and goodbye.